Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's bring it out to the panel now. Also joining the panel on the bird is Liberal radio host Leslie Marshall. Joe, I'm going to go to you first. You heard the representative say he has a plan that's going to do everything the Obama plan did, only it's going to be deficit neutral.
Yeah, right. Welcome to the party. Where was he before? First of all, I think
getting shouted down by Democrats. That's where he was.
Of course, it's all the Democrats'
They wouldn't listen to him.
Hear me out 1 second. Hear me out 1 second. It is totally irresponsible to be repealing a plan when you don't have an alternative in place. And then the excuse we use, hold on, give me a second. Give me a second, please.
That covered 16 million people by covering everyone in the country.
Okay, now if I can finish. You're going to talk about repealing a plan. You have nothing in place, but the fallback is, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have these committees meet. We're going to talk about this, that, the other. That is nonsense.
Hold on. The fallback may be the plan that we've used for the last 275 years,
Joey,
which
he
is
has the plan.
Free market.
He has the plan. If you watch that summit, which they had at the White House when Obama showed up and Pelosi, Paul Ryan showed up with his plan. It was very comprehensive and very thick and made a lot of sense. So I think, look, what we've seen so far since Obamacare has been implemented are higher premiums. Insurers have been dropping coverage. I mean, if you really think this is going to bring down the deficit, look at the last time the government got involved in health care. Medicare and Medicaid. It's the reason our states are being bankrupt.
John, I know you want to jump in. Just allow me to do this. Leslie, go ahead. You heard it. You hear us discussing it here. But what was so wrong? You know, if most Americans would just love to have their old health care system insurance back, why are we doing all this?
Well, first of all, I think it's nothing but political grandstanding because we know it's not going to pass the Senate. The president isn't going to sign it. And by the way, this repeal has now become a redraft. They're like, okay, we want to put an X through that and then do it our way. But they're not going to throw out people that have pre-existing conditions and their coverage. And they're not going to unplug the donut hole for Medicare. And how do you attribute Medicare to the states?
Former Speaker Pelosi said that was going to happen.
How do you attribute Medicare to the states? Well, I don't believe the GOP. That would be political suicide, Eric. They can't do that. So what this is nothing but a waste of taxpayer time and money because it won't pass Senate, it won't get the president's signature, and this is not a repeal. And you want to talk about polls? I don't know what polls you guys are reading. 1 in 4 Americans, 1 in 4 want a full repeal, and less than half of Republicans.
Well, Leslie, Rasmussen poll shows that 75% of Americans want the bill changed. AP says 40% surveyed say they support the law, while 41% oppose it. And then again, there's the one we put up there, Quinnipiac, who said clearly Americans
but Eric, forget the polls. Look at McDonald's dropping coverage. You don't need polls. You have premiums rising. Forget polls. Look at facts. Premiums are rising. McDonald's dropped how many thousands of their employees? The government had to step in and give them a special little carve-out like they did for the unions.
The unions that backed this thing wanted waivers as soon as they got a chance.
Guys, I hate to do this. We have Tucker Carlson on another bird we're going to lose his satellite if we don't get to it. But go ahead, Tucker. Let me go to you, sir. If you open up the Wall Street Journal, the paper that's owned by News Corp, parent company, you went to the op-ed section, which I do every single morning. I almost fell out of my chair. Mr. President Barack Obama left an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal stating his case about Obamacare. Did that influence you at all, sir?
It won me over completely. You know, I've been against it until I opened up and saw his op-ed. And no, look, this is hilarious on the one hand, also being used by the White House as an attempt to resell the plan. Here in Washington, Democratic leaders are saying on the record that the problem with Obamacare is the public just doesn't understand how great it is. They just haven't done enough to sell it. They haven't talked about it enough. They haven't had enough town halls, enough public forums. The president hasn't given enough primetime speeches on the subject. And they truly believe it. And so they're using this as an opportunity to resell it in the hopes they can win the public.
All right, so what is the right doing? What are the GOP doing? They're going to vote now knowing very well that nothing gets repealed if and when there's a Republican in the White House in 2012. It's a long road before this thing could possibly get to a Republican president.
That's exactly right. There are two options. Well, let me just say that the Republicans control the House partly because of dissatisfaction over Obamacare. So the people who voted Republican in the last cycle in the 2010 midterm elections were doing so hoping that Republicans would repeal Obamacare. And frankly, I don't think the Republicans in the leadership have done enough to explain to voters we can't. So there are going to be some pretty confused people when this does not get repealed in the next week.
Tucker, I got to tell you, there are some confused people right here on this panel. We keep hearing about polls and surveys, and 75% are against it, 75% are in favor of it. I'm a little confused. What are your people telling you?
Well, I mean, they're saying the obvious, that this is not going to be repealed. However, because it can't. I mean, they don't control the Senate either. However, there are a surprisingly large number of Democrats in the Senate who have shown willingness to work with Republicans on specific reforms within the bill. This is a massive piece of legislation. I've never even met anyone who knows everything that's in it. I don't think a single living person does. But there are things that can be changed, and that some Democrats are saying we will work with Republicans to change because they fear.
Tucker, are we really going to start this whole process? Are we going to open up that massive can of worms again and start from the very beginning? Should we have pre-existing conditions? Should we have one single-payer system? I mean, that was a massive debate. Do we do that again?
Well, pre-existing conditions is over. The public supports that. I don't think that's going anywhere. Whether they should or not is another question, but they do. A couple of things that may be up for debate, primarily the individual mandate, the idea that every citizen will be required to buy health insurance. You could argue that the system won't work unless that's the law. However, it's really unpopular, and I could see individual Democrats going back and voting to strip that from the legislation.
Here's my problem, Tucker. I'm going to let you go in a second. I know you have something you got to get to, but here's my problem. I'm in favor of just repealing the law. I don't want to start this process again. I don't want to spend the next 2 or 3 years haggling over every line of a 7,000-page bill.
Amen. If you were the preacher, I would put $100 in the collection.
But the GOP's not saying that. My point is this:
I'm serious. Though I agree with you.
We had Nunes tonight saying we have a new plan. Let's try this plan. How about no plan? How about free market?
I agree. How about the sort of leaky, crummy system we had before that was better than the garbage we just got with the passage of this bill? I agree. The problem is there's no mechanism for doing that. The president, his main achievement, so-called, is this legislation. He's going to veto attempts to repeal it, and that's just where we are.
All right, Tucker Carlson, appreciate your time, my friend. Always good to have you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, guys, bring it out to you.
Of the 30 million people who were uninsured, half chose not to be. 16 million people needed to be taken care of. Why are we dealing with 308 million people? Tucker's right. Look, the Republicans have to come up with some kind of plan that makes sense. I hope they do. They have a responsibility
and a third of those
but they also have to vote against it.
And a third of those people are eligible for Medicaid. So why not worry about getting those people on the rolls than reforming the whole system?
And Leslie, there's no one in this country that's left to die in the street. You can walk into any emergency room and receive treatment, whether you have insurance or not. So I'm not really sure. I agree with John here why we need to revamp a multi-trillion-dollar system really to take care of a handful of people.
It's not taking care of a handful of people. And being married to one of the doctors who doesn't get paid every time one of you strolls into the emergency room without insurance, I would like to feed my children too, thank you very much. So when you look at the country and what we're doing economically by utilizing the ER because somebody thinks they might have a fever all the way to something very traumatic like a heart attack, that's not only abusing the medical system, that encourages the private sector to increase premiums.
No doubt,
and that was
Leslie,
happening long before the president was elected.
Emergency rooms are overused. You can go to your doctor when you have a sore throat instead of going into the... Agreed. 100% agree. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about trauma centers where people are on the street. They get a gunshot or they're taken to an emergency room. They're receiving treatment. The point is every single American now is going to pay to make sure that, as John points out, a handful of people on the grander scheme are getting...
This thing should have started small.
Right.
You're already
paying.
Very small with this. We should have started very small. The last thing Republicans should do is introduce some huge monstrosity like the Democrats do.
I mean, thank you. Thank you. Because, Ange, I'm trying to figure out what in the world they're doing. They're coming out with an alternate plan.
Well, you don't need another 2,700
pages. Well,
look what happened just this week. HHS is now going to come out and deem what benefits are essential. They have to pick 10 essential benefits. So that's an issue of now. You're going to be having some shortages, medical shortages. I mean, we're not a one-fits-all nation.
Don't we need to set priorities? And back to Tucker's point, if there are members in the Senate who are willing to work with Democratic members, it isn't a more responsible approach by the Republicans to tinker with the bill, find ways that you could develop and modify things, as opposed to voting a symbolic repeal.
If you
makes
have to
no
cover
sense.
16 million people, why can't you just cover 16 million
people? Guys, I have to ask John Gibson. You're the smartest man I know in the building. I have to. Is this a political mistake to try and develop your own health care plan? At this point, I'm an American going, I really don't care. I don't want either one of them.
You can't repeal something without offering something in replacement. Because you can't because Joey will jump all over you all day long, and he'll be righteous. I mean, you have to say, look, if we're taking this thing away, we're still going to cover people with pre-existing conditions. We're still going to have no caps. We're still going to have 26-year-old. People like that stuff. So what are you going to replace it with? I'm just saying there's 16 million people have to be covered that are going to Leslie's husband and not paying.
Leslie, as much
Those
as,
are the people you got to deal with.
Leslie, as much as I don't like the Democrats' Obamacare law bill that became law, I don't like the Republicans coming up with their own. Do you agree with me on this? If it has to be one or the other, how about none at all?
You know what, Eric, this is where I definitely agree. I would have more respect for the Republicans if they were like, we do not need government-backed, government-controlled health care reform. What they're saying is not repeal. What they're saying is what the majority of those in every poll now that we have together is saying, we want it tweaked. Let me tell you something. I would love to have some caps on malpractice insurance being married to a physician, and I honestly don't think that the government mandate works without a public option.
We have to leave it there, Leslie.
This is something most Americans
Leslie,
agree
we're going to leave it there, and I'm going to send you a check. If your kids are starving, I'm going to send you a check, all right?
I doubt they're starving.
Much more. Follow the money coming up. Keep it here on Fox Business Network, the power to prosper.